Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to continue on with our discussion of the Enneagram, moving through all the various types. And today we're going to talk about type 3, which is called the Achiever. And as their name suggests, they are very focused on achievements. They're very focused on success, being successful, and being seen as successful. They are oftentimes the stars of the personality types. Literally, sometimes they are the stars. They are celebrities. They are politicians. A lot of people that you could probably name are probably type threes because they are very interested in that sort of stuff. They are successful. They are driven. They are ambitious. They're very goal oriented. They can also be very image conscious, very much concerned about how people view them, and can be therefore be very focused on that sort of thing. They will view success in various ways. The obvious way is through money. Most type threes value money. They want to be rich. They want to be seen as being rich, and therefore they put out those sort of airs. But that's not the only way that type threes can view success. They also want to be famous. So maybe they're not wealthy, but you know who they are. Some of the old, thrill seeker. I'm trying to think of one of the old bank robbers. I can picture his name. He was the guy who was asked, why do you rob banks? He said, well, that's where the money is. He seemed to be a little more focused on being famous. Bonnie and Clyde were kind of like that too. Not necessarily the crazy types, like the Charles Manson types, the Jeffrey Dahmers, who did not want to be famous. They had other issues, but the sort of thrill killer kind of people as well. They also might be interested in status. Um, these are the people who become doctors not because they're actually interested in healing people. It's because people respect doctors. Same thing with lawyers. They become lawyers because they want to be respected. You could do this with a lot of different positions. Actually, I've been even told religious folks in certain communities, becoming a priest or becoming a rabbi or having a priest or a rabbi in the family is considered as a real status symbol. And so some type threes will seek out to achieve those ends because of that. I guess probably for that reason a lot of televangelists might be type threes as well. They're interested in fame, they're interested in being ministers, and they're also interested in being very wealthy. It's a nice cross section. And with that, that kind of implies where do they get these ideas of success and what they consider successful? And it usually comes from their family. Usually their parents will tell them overtly or maybe kind of slyly that this is a success and this isn't. And we respect these kind of people. We don't respect these kind of people. These are the sort of parents that would say, don't bother becoming a writer. Writers don't make any money. Go off and study medicine. Go off and become medical school. Become a doctor like your uncle. You see your uncle, he drives a big fancy car. Be like your uncle. You want to be like your loser writer. They don't make any money. This is the sort of message that type 3 or the parents of type 3s would send, and type 3s will pick up on that and run with it. Now some other types might hear that and ignore it. Like a type 4 might not care. They want to become a writer because they want to talk about their pain. We're going to talk about type 4s in the next video. But type 3s would definitely take it to the heart. One of the problems for type 3s is to become so focused on what other people think, what other people consider a success, and what other people will think of them, whether or not they will think of them as successful, is type 3s, oftentimes their whole life and self-image is dictated by what other people think. To the point that if you ask them, what do you want? What do you want to be? They literally don't know. They're not being jerks. They're not being hard-headed or difficult. They literally don't know because they've never thought about it, and they've probably never been encouraged to think about it, and nor they probably don't even really see the value in thinking about it. Well, what do I want to be? Well, I want to be rich. What else? What kind of question is that? That's a dumb question. See, type 3s, as far as my clients go, they're kind of I call them checkbox clients. They come in. usually at the urging of someone else. A type 3 usually will not come to counseling without someone else pushing them, because for a lot of type 3s, going to counseling is considered a failure. It's considered a weakness. There's something wrong with you. Well, they don't like being seen as something is wrong with them. But if their girlfriend demands that they go, if their parents demand that they go, sometimes if a probation officer demands that they go, their employer demands that they go, so then sometimes they'll show up to counseling. And what they're usually looking for is, what do I got to do to be seen as a successful client? To a certain degree, it can be a counselor's dream, because they'll do basically anything I tell them to, because they want to be the best client. They want to get well the fastest. They want to get the hell out of here. And so if I tell them, go for a walk every day for 30 minutes, meditate, keep a journal of your dreams, they'll do it, at least for a little while, and then they're gone. They will quit. They'll be some of the first ones to drop out of counseling. The moment they don't feel like they need to come, either because they feel like they're done, or because probation officer says you can stop going to counseling, then they'll drop out. They're very much the checkbox. What do I got to do to get out of here and get done with it? I don't know if a lot of what we talk about ever really percolates down to the type 3s, because they're not really that interested in looking down. They can, it sounds nasty, but they can be rather superficial, not a lot of depth, not that interested in seeking that out. Mind you, and they're perfectly happy with this. We may see this as an insult. They don't get it. They don't, what depth, who cares, People like me because I look nice. Look at my car. People people like me because of the things I can buy them, or I can do for them, or because of how famous I am. What's this depth thing you keep talking about? So and like I said, yeah, they can be very adaptable to what other people want, and so the group of people that they hang out with, whether it's family or friends or whatever, can really kind of dictate the sort of person that a type 3 is, because they really want praise. They want to be acknowledged for being a success. They want people to basically pat them on the back for being a success by whatever measures that they themselves deem successful. So if they are rich, if they deem success as having a lot of money, then they will definitely buy the nice things. They will have the nicest car, the newest car. They will have brand name clothing. They will live in a nice neighborhood. They will live in the fanciest apartments. They will go to the nicest restaurants. They will tip big. They will buy things for the group. We're all going out to eat. No, don't worry about it. I'll pick up the tab. It's a $300 tab. It's fine. We're having fun. Just whatever. They want people to see that, and they want people to acknowledge it. If they are like their view of success is having a position in society, if they're a doctor, for instance, they're the types that will insist that you call them doctor no matter what. I'm not Mr. Hamrick, I'm Dr. Hamrick. I spent 8 years in evil school to be, not be called doctor. So their basic fear is basically being a nobody. No one knowing who they are, no one not caring. Their basic desire is to feel important, to be important in society, to at least, I should say, feel important. They may not actually be important, just as long as they feel that important, as long as people recognize of how successful they are, then that's their basic desire. As far as substance abuse goes, one of the things I've noticed is my type 3 clients seem to like stimulants the best. I don't think it's not that type 3s are the only type to use cocaine, but they seem to like cocaine more than anybody else. If I have a client who is addicted to cocaine, there's a good chance they're type 3. It's almost like guaranteed. They'll also abuse some of the other stimulants like Adderall, Focalin, maybe even just a lot of caffeine too. If they don't go as far as illegal substances, they're the ones who are constantly drinking because they want that energy. To be successful, you have to do things. You have to work hard. These are definitely the workaholic types who will spend hours and hours working on something. Not because they really love it. It's because they like what comes after it. They're the types that will go to med school, study really hard, get good grades, and then go get the fanciest office in town, work with some of the nicest clients in town, mainly because they like the money that it brings. Not or the kind of the status it brings. Not really because they care about healing people. It's not necessarily their main goal. And so to have that constant energy to kind of keep pushing, to have that drive, eventually you get tired. And so then you need stimulants to kind of keep you going. And so this is the type that's more likely to abuse stimulants because they have probably been taught, again, overtly or covertly, that people who take breaks, people who have downtime, people who sleep 8 hours a night, they're all lazy and they're stupid and they're poor. And you don't want to be lazy, right? And they've probably gotten that message. Again, whether their parents actually meant to shove that in their face or maybe they just picked it up from society or whatever. But that constant need of energy usually means that they also need a constant need of stimulants because the human body needs to take a break. And so these are usually my workaholic clients too that I have to push to get them to stop working so damn hard. So working through our sort of stages of healthiness, working from extreme unhealthy average to healthy, the extreme type 3s are narcissists, almost exclusively. They take their type 3 views of success and superficiality and they shove it all the way to the unhealthy realm. Narcissists, and narcissists are like a whole other video, probably a whole video series actually. But narcissists basically cannot admit fault or failure. They cannot do it. It's not that they don't like it. It's not that they are embarrassed by it or ashamed of it. I mean, they cannot do it. Most of us don't like admitting our screw ups. Most of us don't like admitting when we're wrong or whatever. But we can at least sort of like maybe in our own heads go, oh wow, I really screwed that up. And then maybe if we have to, you have to apologize. Narcissists can't do that. They can't acknowledge it to themselves. And if they start to even approach, you know, acknowledging that their own failings or something, they'll have a narcissistic breakdown. And they are ugly and frightening, and they tend to take a lot of people down with them. What most narcissists do is they project. They either deny or project. That seems to be the two big ones. No, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. No, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I had nothing. I wasn't even there. And so whatever it was, they just don't want to talk about it. They just keep shutting you down. Or they'll project, and it's like, no, you misunderstood what I said. Were you stupid or something? That's what narcissists say. Now we're not talking about the thing that I said. We're talking about, are you stupid? And that's where narcissists want to be. We'll talk about your flaws. Don't even suggest that I have flaws. That's an extreme type 3. And so, very, very, very bad people to be around, as you can kind of imagine. The unhealthy levels, they're not quite to the clinical level of narcissistic personality disorder, but they are kind of like what the layman's term of narcissist are. They're still very self-centered, but they are at least healthy enough to admit to themselves that they have flaws. They don't want to show it to anybody else. So these are the people who will lie about their accomplishments. Because they don't want to acknowledge that they aren't successful, but they also aren't successful, so the ones who will just kind of lie about it. These are the people who like live deep in debt. You assume that they're just really rolling in the cash, and whatever business they run must be doing really successful. Look at that brand new, Hummer that he bought, or look at that fancy house he's got, or they went on another trip to Tuscany this year. Wow, that's amazing. And in reality, they're up to their eyeballs in credit card debt because they just keep writing off. Running up the credit cards and stuff. They don't actually have the money for any of that stuff, but they don't want you to know that. And they probably don't even want to acknowledge that to themselves. They're also the ones who lie about whether or not they even graduated. They're the ones who lie about what school they graduated from. It's like, oh yes, I went to Harvard Medical School. It's like, well, no, you didn't. You went to one of those Bahamas medical schools. Now maybe you're still a good doctor, but in their mind, that's not good enough. That they went to some online school in the Bahamas or whatever. No. I have to go to Stanford. I have to go to Harvard or whatever. And so they'll lie about that stuff. Military. I guess that's one I left out. A lot of times the type 3s will want to join the military because that becomes a status symbol. They either want to join a particular branch of the military because they see that as being the best, or they want to be like in the special forces, they want to be a Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, whatever. And these are the ones who will also kind of engage in that stolen valor. If you're in the military, you know what I mean. These are the people who will claim that they were in a particular war zone and they weren't, that they've won a certain medal and they didn't. They have a Purple Heart, but actually were never wounded. And so they're kind of ones who will kind of engage in that stolen valor as well, because they want you to be impressed by their successes, but they don't have any successes that they at least think are recognizable, and so they end up having to lie because they're just not not that healthy, and they will become enraged if you call them out on it. They, in that sense, they are a little bit like an extreme narcissist, that they will attack anyone who tries to point out these flaws. If using a stolen valor example, if a guy who's been telling the story about his experiences in Fallujah in Iraq, he says he's in the Marines and that sort of thing, and he bumps into another Marine who was actually staged in Fallujah and starts kind of pointing out inconsistencies in his story, he'll start attacking that Marine. Probably not like physically, but usually he'll attack him socially, because what they want to do is make sure that no one believes that guy, because I want him to believe how successful I am. So that guy's full of shit. You know what he's talking about. He's a liar. He's probably an idiot. Probably got that traumatic brain injury. Don't listen to him. That's how like an unhealthy type 3 can also think. And they will attack people even for perceived threats. Like using the same example, the veteran who's always talking about combat that he wasn't in, and he meets an actual Marine who was actually in Fallujah, and that Marine may actually just not even care. He may whatever, he not really reading too much into what the guy has to say or anything else. But this unhealthy type 3 will kind of figure out, oh, this person might call me out on my bullshit, so I need to like keep an eye on him. I need to do something about him. As you can see, extreme and unhealthy type 3s can make amazing villains. In fact, a lot of them are villains. And when we talk about character examples, you'll see that, yeah, some really cool villains are type 3s, because they will attack people who they think are, even just think that they are their enemies. An average type 3, they're still very success driven, but rather than becoming enraged at the lack of their success, they tend to become jealous of other people's success. They tend to become envious and stuff. They're the types who, kind of using the medical school example, that they'll get into medical school, but they'll be jealous of the guy who went to Harvard when they went to the Bahamas. They probably won't lie about it, but they'll definitely feel bad around that. Even if the guy who went to Harvard didn't care, he is so far beyond caring about what other people did. But the average type 3 is usually jealous. Sometimes they can use that jealousy to drive them on to work harder, and that can be a good thing. Maybe, depends. But yeah, they definitely are still very success driven, conscious, and worried about their pecking order within the rest of things. They also can be the overachievers, the workaholics, the types who constantly work because they want that success, they want the money, they want the recognition, or whatever else like that. They're not really as interested in taking from someone else, like an extreme or an unhealthy type 3, but they will probably work themselves to death trying to achieve these goals that maybe they really can't achieve. But they also tend to be very superficial. These are the ones who are very status conscious, very image conscious. They can also be very self-doubting and rather arrogant. I distinguish arrogance from confidence. To me, confidence is knowing that you're good at something and having some data to back it up. So if you say, I'm a really great writer, here's my Hugo Award, here's my Saturn Award, here's my Stoker Awards, here's all the awards I won, here's all my book sales, here's the how many people showed up to my last book signing. So you should listen to me when I talk about, how to write. That's the sign of confidence, because this is someone who knows they're good at something and can back it up. Arrogance is someone who's convinced they're good at something and they have no evidence to back it up. They either have no evidence at all or it's kind of paltry. Um, and so, and I don't want starting fights, but this is where you'll get the people who have written one book and then they have this whole YouTube channel on how to write things. And try and really put themselves off as if they're the expert. And if you try and call them out on that, they attack you. I understand I have a YouTube channel and I have very few books out, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not an expert. That's why I cringe at the idea of doing a lot of writing craft, because I'm still trying to learn that myself. I'm not confident in my abilities as a writer, nor am I arrogant enough to believe that you should listen to everything I have to say anyway. Now, healthy type 3s, whole different bag. They can be very successful, but also very humble, very helpful. They're a success. They want to be a success, and they want you to be a success. They have flipped the script. Instead of life being a competition, they see it as more life being more like a team sport. These are the types that will say confidently, like using my writer example, I am an established writer. I'm famous. I've won all these awards. I've sold all these books. I've had all these book signings. Listen to me, because I'll make you a good writer too. And when you win awards, they want to sing those praises. When you have a big book sale, they want people to know about it, because your success is a part of their success. And they see that, and they see that this is where they can be much more helpful. And they are usually really good at what they're doing, and you do actually want to listen to them, because of all the types, they're the ones who are the most driven to be the best at something. And once they achieve that, if they are healthy, that's probably the person you want to learn from, because they've probably already figured out a lot of stuff, and maybe have taken it to a whole different level, because they have that drive to just sort of keep it going and keep it working and keep going at it. And in that sense, they can be very much role models and inspirations for a lot of people. And hopefully a lot of the celebrities that you are listening to and following are healthy type 3s, because you can actually learn a lot from them. So talking about like some examples, in the real world, almost any politician, celebrity, I mean, if they're famous and you've heard of them, there's a good chance they're a type 3, because they have done that work to become a success in a field. Even if they're like a successful scientist, I think like Stephen Hawking. This is not a guy who's looking to be, a famous celebrity, but he is driven to be an expert in his field of physics, and then we appreciate him and we listen to him, and because he's a really smart guy. As far as fictional examples, really the best one, the first one that came to my mind was Draco Malfoy. The little blonde kid from the Harry Potter series. He hates Harry Potter right off the bat. Why? Because Harry Potter's famous. Harry Potter's the boy who survived. He's the one who defeated Voldemort, and he's got the little lightning on his skull, and everybody knows Harry Potter knows who he is. Draco is one of the Malfoys. He comes from a wealthy aristocratic kind of family within the wizarding world. They kind of have high positions within the wizarding world, and he is expected to follow in their footsteps, and to also be, in House Slytherin, and be an expert and be a leader in that and that sort of thing. And what's interesting is if you follow the story, I actually watched the movies, I never really got into the books, but towards the end, Draco Malfoy is kind of a sympathetic character. He's still driven by what his parents want, and that leads him into associating with Voldemort and all the evil wizards and stuff, and he didn't really like that. He's kind of a little shit, but at the same time, he's not evil. And that was a good example of J.K. Rowling trying to give an example of the difference between someone who's an asshole and someone who's evil. Voldemort, clearly evil. Draco Malfoy, yeah, he's a jerk, but I mean, he's not that bad. And because of that, he didn't really fit in with the more evil wizards and stuff. And so that's a very interesting character arc that type threes can go from. Is they can be very sort of selfish, self-centered, shallow, superficial kind of person, and then by the end of the story, they've learned some lessons, and now they have some depth, and they're still a success. They're still pushing to be leaders in some field, but they don't have that same sort of, I don't know, icky drive that makes them sort of someone we don't really want to be around. The hard part with type threes, especially as a protagonist, is they're going to start off probably being very unlikable, and a lot of readers don't want to follow an unlikable character. You can kind of work around that. There's some comedies that are like that. There's a movie starred Diane Keaton. I can't remember the name of it. It came out in the 80s. It's an old story, but she was like some big wizard in, I believe it's like advertising or something, and she was really pushing to move up that corporate ladder, and being a woman in the workforce, and even in the 80s. And I forget what happened, but somehow she became the guardian of like this baby. It's like a 1 year old or something, and all of a sudden she's having to like be a stay-at-home, be a single mom, taking care of this baby, which she has nothing, she has no idea how to handle kids. She never had kids, wasn't interested. She only wanted to move up that corporate ladder. And then over the course of the story, she learns to love the child, and she is annoyed by it at first, but then she learns to love it, and tells her bosses to screw off, and then she runs off and lives in the woods and writes a book, and then she becomes like the successful author. Still a type 3, still very success driven, but now she's learned that there's some more important things to life. And so that's another character arc that type 3s can follow through. Some other examples are actually Scarlett O'Hara is probably another good example. If you remember the Gone with the Wind series, she is very driven to be a success, to be seen as a success. That's why she, pulled the drapes down and made a dress so she would look nice when she went to go see Rhett Butler, because she didn't want to look poor when she had to ask for money. She's very family focused. Her visions of success was having the plantation, keeping that land, Terra in the family, and so that's why she fought so hard for it. But she also wasn't a really nice person, because she stole another woman's man mainly because she kind of wanted to, so make somebody else jealous, I think. So that's another example of how a type 3 character can follow this story arc. And she starts off being a rather unlikable character, and then she grows into being a more real character, especially through a lot of the hardships that she suffered through. Probably the biggest turning point was like when her daughter was killed in the horseback riding accident. So yeah, type 3s, very interesting people, very interesting characters. Chances are you know some type 3s. I definitely know you know of some type 3s, because type 3s tend to be famous. And so I'm sure like some of the social media influencers that you follow are type 3s and that sort of thing. Probably some of the writers you follow are type 3s. But anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.